And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Bubba the BatFlip, episode 149. Going to continuing our preview reviews of the positions around fantasy baseball to get you ready as we are on March 6th now, grooving into draft season. It's not, there's still DCs going on, but we're almost in full fab mode here pretty soon. So tonight, relief pitchers, middle infielders. Last episode, we had catchers and corner infielders, so we'll get you going around the diamond. But before we get there, you can find me on Twitter at BDentric, and my co-host is always on Twitter at BatFlipCrazy. Toby, how we doing, my friend?
Doing well, Bubba. We're getting there. It's early March right now, but by the time we reconvene, it'll be mid-March.
Yeah.
And then, we're like less than 3 weeks away from Vegas. So pretty exciting, a nice time. I'm enjoying some of the slow drafting, like not actually enjoying it, as in like enjoying it, but like, it's nice to kind of roll through a few of these to get to feel a little bit more prepared for the player pool. And kind of go from there.
100%. We have Barf this Saturday, which is going to be awesome. We got our draft, and of course, we're drafting next to each other again, Toby. It's like a tradition unlike any other. It's
did
crazy.
you set your KDS to do that, or did you just get screwed?
It was a little bit of both. Like, what did I get? 14th or 15th, something like that. Basically, that was like my 8th or 9th choice.
Okay.
So it wasn't like my premium option, but yeah, that's what happens. So yeah, fun stuff there. I've been going 6-1, and then like 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever. I don't know. So maybe 15 was one of my last choices. Now I think about it. So yeah, not what I wanted. No.
Okay.
I'm not liking the back. I don't like the
sorry.
back end. I don't like the back end based on that round 3, round 4. I feel like I missed out on a lot that you could get on the other side of things. So
yeah,
it's a big difference.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see in the third, fourth. Yeah, what gets there. It was actually my number 5 choice for KDS this time around, but I was 14th. I got 14th selection. It feels like maybe this was biased against us.
Yeah,
I don't know if Justin pulled something, with NFBC and screwed us both over with the KDS. I don't know if we've done something to upset him, but the fact, what are the odds that we get our 14th and 15th choice here? Yes. But I have not drafted from the very back. So I intentionally had it up there pretty high. So I got a little lucky there.
We'll give you a nice practice in case that lands that way in Vegas for you. So you'll have an idea.
Yeah, it's hard to. I'm trying to think about where I'm going to be. I really don't know. I may end up just being in the middle because it feels like I'm at least in the middle. Yeah. So
it's the spot I've been liking the most, pretty much. That middle area, definitely not having to reach as much, and it's been kind of a nice little groove to get into and draft. So we'll see how it goes. Obviously, a lot can change as the ADPs continue to change. And guys like Jordan Walker go nuts, and everything else happens, and injuries everywhere, and there's so much fun all around baseball. So that's when we do these reviews of the previews of the positions to see how things have changed throughout the last month to 2 months since we talked about some of these positions. And let's start with relief pitchers, Toby. And the top 5 in relievers at the time of making this outline was Edwin Diaz, Emmanuel Clase, Josh Hader, Jordan Romano, and Devin Williams. Anything really changing to you out of those big 5, or is there something that stands out to you?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think with the top 5. So I got Diaz in a draft in one of my DCs in round 2. I got him, and then I was in a similar position in TGFBI, and I got Clase. At least I think that's what I did. Yeah, I definitely did because I've only done 2 drafts, so it has to be, or 3, I guess, at this point. And part of that was just like diversifying a little bit. I think also part of that though is I think I might like Clase a little bit more. I just think when we broke it down last time, the saves I think is one story, because I think Clase is very clearly like the 9th inning guy, and Diaz very clearly is the high leverage guy. And it's, and while that's not a huge deal, right? It's like, I mean, is Diaz going to get 30 saves? Probably. Will Clase get 35? Probably. So it's not a huge difference, but I do like that. And I just think from a profile perspective, his 70% plus ground ball rate with some of the skills that he was showing at the end of the year makes me feel like it's just a little bit it makes me feel a little bit better about, we've seen Diaz have some, not bad seasons, but not his best seasons. And Claude has been pretty consistent throughout. So again, splitting hairs at this point, either one could be a top closer. But I think I'm leaning a little bit towards Claude right now if I had to draft. How are
Yeah,
you feeling
I'm
about those two?
it's funny you mentioned that because I've kind of it's been either or for me in drafts. It kind of almost depends on how I feel that day when I'm picking because it's a lot of what you're saying. Do I want like the strikeout upside of one versus the saves upside of the other? And the improvements Class A has made has been outstanding. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, Diaz, like you said, he's done it before, and then he's like hit the wall, then he's done it again. Like there's so many things, and then at the same time, the Mets should be a very, very good team. That's very clear. Where Cleveland, they should be good. We don't know. It's Cleveland; they could go a million different directions, but they should be pretty good. So it's a tough one. I think I looked at my player shares on Sunday, and I think I have like 3 or 4 Diaz's and 3 or 4 Class A's. It's almost like pretty even around the two. But I try to. That's one thing. If I have like the back end there, I'm almost trying to hope one of them falls to me. Usually they're gone by round 3 and 4, especially in a 15 teamer. But it's a nice spot. That's another reason why I like kind of that early pick, middle pick. You can get one of these two guys, feel a lot better about life type situation. But I'm with you on the idea that Clase is growing on me a lot more than maybe 2 months ago when it seemed like Diaz was the clear cut one. It's always been 1A, 1B for me, but Diaz felt like the sure 1A, where I think Clase definitely deserves the argument to be the 1A. And we'll have to kind of wait and see how that one plays out. Obviously, when the season happens.
For sure.
Um,
Yeah, and it's been over 2 minutes of the podcast, and I haven't mentioned the spreadsheet yet.
so
So
DC DC
I just
should be
wanted
happy.
to mention that the spreadsheet does have Diaz ahead by a little over $1. So do with that information what you will. All right. I'm not actually a human here. I'm just a conduit of the spreadsheet. It speaks to me, and I speak for it.
I love it. I
So
love it. With the other three though, Hater Romano. I don't. I think I have like one hater from like a guillotine league or gladiator league. I mean, I don't think I have any shares of him any from DC 50s fab leagues. No Romano at all for me. I do have some Williams though. I like Devin Williams quite a bit, so I am a Devin Williams fan. But I don't have any hater or Romano. What about you?
yeah, I don't have any hater or Romano. I feel better about Romano, the velos, where it's kind of at. So he should be fine. He seems like he's healthy. I think there was like a little something where he was supposed to pitch for Team Canada in the WBC. Maybe he's still doing that, but I thought they said no, we're actually not going to do that. But I could have just made that up. So he's fine. I still don't love just like the spot where he's going. I like some other players more, but I feel better having seen him. Hater, little bit of a concern. He was down 2 miles per hour, I think, on his velo the other day. I don't know if he's pitched again since then, but the last time I saw it, let me just see. I don't think he played in a Statcast. Yeah, he didn't play in a Statcast park. So that's a little bit of a concern, and it may seem minor, and it's like, hey, these guys have been here, they've done it all, but something like that. If I'm, on the fence, I'll lean one guy in one direction. If things change in spring training, then maybe I'll adjust back. But for right now, I don't think I'm targeting either of them. Devin Williams is interesting because the projections really don't like him, but he's also somebody that's outpaced the projections and outpaced his ERA estimators pretty consistently throughout his career, and so that's a situation where I feel a little bit better about him. Like I would probably take him straight up over Romano.
Yeah,
I think.
100%.
Um, and then, but yeah, I like the players going a little bit further behind him more. I think.
Yeah, I'm with you. And the one guy I'm going to mention before we do these ADP debates that's been falling in ADP is Felix Bautista. That was because of the injury concerns. He looks like he'll be ready opening day, if not like very soon. So I've been swiping him up everywhere I can at a quote unquote discount. We'll see if it pays off or not. Could be fool's gold, but I've been taking that dip for a guy we saw be absolutely electric last year. So it's something else that's changed since we last talked. All right, we got a couple ADP debates here. I'll go in within a few picks of each other. Devin Williams, Rice Iglesias, Ryan Presley. How do you look at these three?
Yeah, so for me, of these three, I think the guy I like the most is actually Iglesias. I like that he's done it before. He's been consistently good, like every single year. He's got multiple pitches that he can go to. He's on a Brave team that I think is absolutely outstanding. I mean, you look at the rotation they have, you look at the other bullpen pieces, you look at the hitting, like they're going to be in a chance, they're going to have a chance to win a lot of games. And so I think he's being punished a little bit, maybe just because he wasn't a closer last year, or people have the sense that he had a bad year, but he really was very solid. So I would kind of put him at the top there. I think the second is a little bit of a struggle. I mean, Presley was really good. He was the skills were out of this world like the last little bit of the season. For much of the season, the Astros are going to be an incredibly good team. They're going to win a lot of games. I think my only concern is the volume. You know, he's more like in the 55 inning range, I think, than he is. And let me just see. And so, like, it's been about 2 minutes again, so I think I should probably mention the spreadsheet. But I aggregate the playing time projections from various systems. So it's like, like Clase has 70 innings, for instance. Diaz is at 64. Helsley's at 67. Romano's at 65. Sorry, I got to find these guys. So Iglesias is at 65. Where's Presley? He's at 60, right? So he's at 5 innings fewer, which you're like, oh, that's not a big deal. Well, it's almost 10%, that's almost 10% fewer innings. So, that's definitely, something that I go to. Devin Williams is at 64. So he's up pretty good. So I feel like Devin Williams is projected for 284 with 114 whip. Iglesias, you got 313 with a 105 whip. I'd probably go in the whip direction there just because whip is a little bit more of a scarce category, especially as you get later in drafts. You can find kind of some of those like, for lack of a better example, like those Miles Mikoloses where you're like, oh, like he's actually a good whip guy, but like, you can find some of those like 1.25 whip guys with a middling ERA, like a 3.5, 3.75, something like that. But it's hard to find those really good whip guys later on. So I'd probably go Iglesias, Williams, and then, wait, what was it? And then
Presley.
Presley. Yeah. For some reason, I thought Jordan Romano was in there. Maybe he's just like in my nightmares or something.
He's etched into your brain.
I got no problem with you,
do not
Jordan.
draft.
I got no problem with you, Jordan.
He helped me a lot last year. I drafted him all over the place last year. It's a little different now at this ADP and other situations in play. But I'm very similar to you. I love Raisel Iglesias. I've always liked Raisel Iglesias. It was a shame when he got traded last year, but he was still great with Atlanta, if not better with Atlanta. You mentioned a better baseball team, which should do wonders for him. He's a guy we've seen in the past go multiple innings and be just fine. He can do a lot of things very, very well. We saw what Kenley Jansen did there. I think, honestly, Raisel is better than Kenley. It's not like a big statement by any means. But like if Kenley could do what he did, how can't Raisel do that, if not more? And I think that's a big plus as well. He could be one of those 40 save guys on that team. That's how good the Braves should be. So big Raisel fan. Then I'm with you on the Devin Williams Presley conversation has been so much fun because I seem to be like drafting against them every time. Those like the two options. It feels like I'm a Devin Williams fan. It comes down to like, do I want just the quantity of saves, which in theory you do want, where I think Presley out saves Devin Williams because Devin Williams might spend more time in high leverage situations than Presley will. Presley will be in the ninth inning. That's what Houston's going to do. Problem is like you mentioned, Presley also will miss time. He will spend at least one IL stint, if not two, every single year. That's what he does. And that's where you have him down to the 60 innings compared to the other guys. So it comes down to like quantity of saves versus maybe elite strikeout and ratios from a reliever that Devin Williams will give you compared to Presley. That's the way I see it. Could be totally wrong. But so I've been leaning Williams over Presley in that regard. So we're in the same boat on that one. But Raisel pretty easily for me out of those three. This next one, it's pretty nasty, but it's the only other one that had
guys getting. I saw it. And it scared me.
It's the only other one that had guys getting drafted close to each other. That's the only reason why I put it on here. It's Alexis Diaz.
I think you meant Scott Barlow instead of Joe Barlow. I was going to say, I was like, man, Joe Barlow's going at ADP of 600, I think.
You're right. It's Alexis Diaz, Daniel Bard, and Scott Barlow, all going pretty close to each other. This is also before Daniel Bard got hurt. Who knows how long that's going to be for? Might be a minor thing. Who knows? But honestly, I don't want any of these guys. Maybe Scott Barlow
Neither
out
do
of the three.
I. We're
If I
similar.
had to pick one, it would be Scott Barlow. But honestly, I don't really want any. So, how do you look at this situation?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a good ADP debate. I have Scott Barlow as the top guy in this. He's the only one that I might have slight interest in. But still, like, there's just Royals aren't very good. And is he really going to be the guy there all the time? And is he going to get traded midseason to somebody else? I'm not as interested. And I think it's also a really juicy part of the draft, you know. I have him as an ADP of 129 in the spreadsheet, which I hadn't mentioned in a couple minutes. And then Alexis Diaz. So I have them both being like pretty terrible values, but being right next to each other in terms of pitchers. One being player 170 and one being player 175. And then the Daniel Bard guy is down there, player 189. So they're actually pretty close ADP wise. I think they're both pretty terrible values. I think, you know, with Bard, it's like he had a perfect season last year. It's not going to be a perfect season this year. And it can go wrong pretty quickly for him. Diaz, we talked about him last time, but let's do a little, what was your walk rate over the last 10 games of the season? So let's see. Actually, let's do a larger sample. Let's do, what was your walk rate the last 15 games of the season? For Alexis Diaz, it was 16.4%. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Alexis Diaz's walk rate was about twice as high as, yeah, it was twice as high. It was way too high. Let's also see like some, so let's see what his BABIP was over the same period of time. Yeah, so his BABIP was 182 over the same period of time, so he wasn't really hurt by it, right? What was his home run for a fly ball during that period of time? It was 5% home run per fly ball during that period of time. So what you're looking at is Alexis Diaz getting a crap ton of guys on base, not giving up any hits, not giving up any homers, and getting out of it. And that's not going to happen again. So you're going to get screwed. And then Daniel Bard, let's go on the Daniel Bard whip train right here for a second.
Running out of that one.
So Daniel Bard's whips throughout his career, once my yeah. So since well, I mean, there was a 7-year gap between his seasons. So since he's come back to the majors, in 2020 it was 1.3. That's rough. The next year in 2021 it was 1.6, and then last year it was 0.99. Now it actually wasn't, last year wasn't his lowest year in terms of walk rate. You know, it was his highest year in terms of K rate, but it wasn't his highest year in terms of swinging strike rate. You know, it was his best K minus walk at 18%, but it was also his lowest home runs per 9. Like everything went his way, and it's not going to go his way again. And so really when you make this pick, you got to be asking yourself, like, how much am I willing to sacrifice for saves? And it feels like if you're in a draft and that's the question you're asking yourself, like, I'm not sure that that's a better question than saying, hey, what's the chance that, you know, God, who's like a spec closer right now? I'm not sure that's better, honestly, than saying like Carlos Estevez is going at pick 240, and he may have sucked so far in spring, but, you know, I think there's a 55% chance that he's going to pitch. And then if he pitches, there's a 75% chance that he's mediocre, you know, or like good enough, right? Like 3.5, 1.2 whip or something like that. Whereas with Bard, I think it's much more like, all right, maybe he's like at 100% of being successful, but like having a successful season, I would put at a pretty low rate there, and then you're giving up pretty good draft capital with the pick that he's going at to get him. So
yeah, it's rough. It's rough. Daniel Bard, great season. Not going to do it again. It's pretty simple stuff there. Let's talk about some targets. ADP 6 through 10. Some of the relievers coming off the board here: Ryan Presley, Raisel Iglesias, Ryan Helsley, Felix Bautista, and Kenley Jansen. Who would be your target in that range?
Yeah, I mean, in that range, you know, we talked about it already, but I think in that, of what you mentioned, I'd say Iglesias, And then I'd say here, let me just order them by ADP here. That'll give me a better shot. So I would say like Iglesias would be the top there probably. Williams a little bit above Presley. I think Bautista is the one guy that I just wouldn't go after. Sorry, Bubba. I know you mentioned you just
That's
got
all
a bunch
good.
of them, but we talked about it last time. I'm a little concerned just about the kind of skills and the walk rate for him, and then you add on the injury a little bit. That has me concerned. I do like Ryan Helsley a lot. He is also down a little bit below wise, but he's still like above 99, which is really nice. And then with Jansen, I mean, we covered him before too, and he's fine. Like I think he'll probably be fine. Like mid threes ERA and 1-2 WHIP maybe, and he'll probably get all the saves there. So I don't think that's a bad. I don't think that's a bad roll of the dice either. Going after him there.
Yeah, for me, it's Iglesias, it's Bautista. Don't mind Jansen if you fault him. I agree with what you said on that one. That he always gets a bad rap. I always enjoy the ADP that you get him at. So I'll take that every single time. When we talk ADP 11 through 20, we have Camilo Duval, Clay Holmes. It starts to get murky, folks. David Bednar. Let's keep scrolling. Alexis Diaz, Scott Barlow, Daniel Bard, Peter Fairbanks. A couple more here. Andres Munoz and Paul Sewald. Let's stop it there. So, anybody in that range that stands out to you because it gets bad quick.
Yeah. I don't like Doval at all.
Yeah, I'm off
I'm
him
kind of
too.
steering clear of him. I think we talked a little bit about him. I do like Bednar quite a bit. I think Bednar is really good. I think the situation in Pittsburgh obviously isn't ideal in terms of the number of wins that he'll have access to, but he put together I think 25 saves last year. He's really good. So I don't mind Bednar at all. Not really interested in Holmes either. Yeah, it's just like in this point of the draft, I think these are the guys that you know, really, I'm kind of like I'd rather probably spec on guys a little bit. I do like Fairbanks a decent amount. Was he included in the
Yeah,
list of
he
guys?
was in
Yeah,
there. Yeah,
yeah, I do like. I think John Duran is interesting. There's a really good podcast that Greg Jewett did for the Athletic at Rates and Barrels that I'd highly recommend people checking out as well. Where he kind of went through through situation, and that was really interesting. And he highlighted the fact that that Duran, like the Twins have been very clear that they're trying to cap guys' earnings by limiting their saves. That's what they did with Taylor Rogers before. And so that limits my interest in him a little bit. I think, but his skills are just off the charts, and then you look at that bullpen and you're kind of like, who else is going to be there? Because, Jorge Lopez had a great first half last year, but he's got a lot of career of not being a very good pitcher. When he does that, his velo is also down a little bit. So I'm not sure either one of those guys is of a ton of interest to me, although Duran could be, but he's going so high. Like it's just such a valuable pick you're giving up there. I really love that area of the draft, honestly. So I have just a hard time going there with guys. Yeah. So who did I miss? Who did I miss in that
you
group?
had the Seattle closers and Munoz and
Yes.
Sewald, and
Um,
yeah, and then some of the guys we already talked about, Alexis Diaz and Bard and Barlow.
Yeah, with Sewell's a little bit interesting to me. I don't necessarily mind that. He's already started pitching. I think he's been pitching well from what I've seen, at least results. I don't know if he's pitched at the StatCast Stadium yet, where we're really getting a good sense of how well he's pitching. But I think he pitched a clean inning, which is nice. I think it's his job probably in the vast majority of situations. Munoz is obviously probably a superior pitcher, but Seawald or whatever. He's been pretty good for the last couple seasons. So I don't mind specking there. I'd rather spec, not necessarily spec, but like I'd rather go after maybe like a guy who gets 75% of the saves here, who has good skills, than I would a little bit earlier, just because I think that's a really prime area for both pitchers and hitters. There's a lot of guys in that region that I really like. So yeah, so I would stay off of Munoz just because I don't think he's the closer, so I don't think you have to get him here. Sewell, I think, is definitely an interesting character right here. So that's kind of my general sense of those guys.
Yeah, we're on a lot of the same ones. I've been interested in Clay Holmes, but I've been steering a little clearer as the draft season's gone on. I like Bednar quite a bit. I just wish the Pirates had given more save chances because they just aren't going to be good. That's the part that stinks, but he should help you everywhere else. And then Fairbanks and Sewell are two guys I've been starting to circle as draft season's gone on. If I can get two good closers early, those are guys I've been definitely looking towards because they'll get you the ratios plus the save chances. So big fans of those two as well. And Fairbanks, everyone's talks about the Rays. You know, they always have all these guys close. They do. But when they have a good guy that doesn't get hurt, they usually stick with them. The thing is, the Rays are always getting guys hurt and moving guys around and doing that thing. Sewell or Fairbanks could easily give you 20 plus saves. That wouldn't shock me at all. So, yeah, definitely interested in that one. And indeed. All right,
Yeah,
let's go.
I find myself in the same situation every year where I go in and I'm like, I'm going to grab two closers, Bubba. I'm going to get these two closers so I don't have to worry about it at all. And then I get into the draft and I'm like, oh my God, I love these hitters and these starters. Like these guys are so good. Like let's grab them. And I'm like, oh, I don't really want to get this mediocre closer here. You know, it feels too wrong. But yeah, I don't know.
Yep, that's the beauties and the trials and tribulations of drafting. That's the fun of it all as we do this time and time again. And then in April, we're going to wish we were still drafting because it's all behind us. Let's go to the middle infield now, where there's a little bit more to talk about than there is relievers. Anything changed for you when looking at second base? I know it's one of those positions where it kind of dries up pretty quick, not quite like third base, but it does get interesting. There's a lot of depth, I guess you could say, but it's just not like you love it depth. It's more like, hey, it's not a bad middle infielder in around 27 depth, but like how are you looking at second base?
Yeah, you know, I'm both glad and not glad that we're looking at middle infield today, just because I compared to all the different positions, I really don't like middle infield and I don't like shortstop and second the most. Like if I were to rank all the positions, maybe outfielders in there. The one caveat that I'd say to that, and this has really been my approach all draft season, is I'm really not focusing on the positions at all. I'm trying to draft the best players. And regardless of position until I have to, you know. And so what I'm more looking for in these situations is perceived value of guys. And just like any other position, there are players that provide some value in here. So I think there are pockets that I really like, you know, at the different positions. I would say shortstop, I haven't done it yet. You know, even though I love first base this year, I've been getting a lot of first basemen in the first round so far. So we'll see if that continues. But shortstop, you know, obviously is a position I think that would be interesting to get early on, just because I do think that you have some really elite performers up there, and I think that goes down a little bit like the further along that you get into draft. I do think that there's some second baseman going late. I think there's a variety of different options there that you can kind of go to. So I think that's fine. Whereas I don't really like the second baseman going earlier on. So I'm much more in kind of maybe a wait and see approach at second base versus shortstop. But I think with all of them, yeah, I think like the deeper you get, the more second basemen stand out to me. The earlier on you are, the shortstop obviously stand out. And I think there's a couple nice ones kind of in the middle range as well that you can go to. So I do think that there's a lot of flexibility, but I will say the shortstop position, I think, is probably the worst as you get later in drafts. So I would just say, you know, make sure you don't wait too long on the shortstop position. You know, to get your first shortstop, because you can always get one shortstop earlier on and then fill your middle infielder with a second baseman or something like that. So, you know, so that's what I would say. On that, that's kind of been my approach as I've gotten there. And I've had a couple of teams where I'm like, I'm a little late getting a second baseman here. It's a little rough, and like a DC or not getting enough depth, but yeah.
No, we're on the same page, and I've been saying it too. Shortstop, we always talk about how deep shortstop is. It is not the same kind of depth this year. Sure, there's a bunch of like quote unquote fantasy viable shortstops, but the quality is not what it used to be. It definitely drops off quickly. That's why I keep saying I like to leave the draft with somebody no later than like Willie Adames, Jeremy Pena level of shortstop. I want at least one from there or before. I'm trying not to reach for one in the first rounds if I don't have to, but I've been finding myself liking Francisco Lindor more and more, especially if he falls into round 3. That's been an attractive piece to me. Like just little things like that where shortstop can get kind of nasty. But second base, I don't really like the early second basemen don't stand out to me as much as other positions, kind of like what you were saying. So I just kind of wait on the position, not on purpose, I guess, but it just seems that way. And like Gleyber Torres started to look a little more appealing to me later on in drafts, guys like that. And then I don't mind waiting for like the Colton Wongs of the world and stuff like that. If worse comes to worse, preferably a middle infielder, like you said. But they say in 15-team leagues, there's always a position you're going to be kind of like weak at. Second base is fine with me if it's one of those guys late in those scenarios. But it's definitely not what it used to be, is what it feels like. Because I'm not even in love with like the Ozzy Albies of the world like I used to be. Like I like him a lot, but it doesn't like I'm not running to go draft him. So after you get to like Marcus Semien in the early rounds, it's kind of like, yeah, you got these guys. That's kind of what stands out there. And they're not like jumping off like Altuve. I love Jazz, but it's just none of these guys are really doing it for me. And then as you get deeper in, it's like, tell me the difference between Jorge Polanco, Thairo Estrada, Vaughn Grissom. Like they're all kind of very similar kind of dudes to me. So it makes it kind of tough to want to reach for them when you can go get like a cool third or fourth outfielder, or go get a third or fourth starting pitcher, or go and do these other things to fill your roster and your team's needs instead of just filling positional needs, like Toby was saying. Not worried so much about position as in getting the best players for your roster. And that's where it leaves me going like just deeper at the second base position and just filling it at some other point in time, unless it just kind of happens where it works out and I get a guy I want that falls or something. But more often than not, that's just not happening right now. All right, let's do some ADP debates here at the position. We got, let me click the middle infielders tab here to make it a little more official. All right, we got Tommy Edman, ADP of about 75, give or take. Dansby Swanson, ADP of 82. So they're the 12th and 13th middle infielders off the boards. How do you view these ones? Tommy Edman is always a fun and controversial name out there.
Yeah, right. This one's an interesting one. Both guys that show up as really good values where they're going, actually, in the spreadsheet, since we haven't mentioned it in a couple minutes. But I haven't gotten either one. I've been in a position to get Swanson, and I can't quite get there. He's probably going to bat third in that lineup, so he's going to be in a really good spot. Maybe it's the new situation. I'm not quite sure, but I just have not been able to go there. Maybe I'll get there later in the season. Edman, again, all the controversy around, is he going to hit first? Is he going to hit, towards the back end of the lineup? I think the key is if he gets 600 plate appearances, right? He's gotten close to that or at that the last couple of years. Let me just make sure. I feel like he has. But he's done that and he's been, really successful. And maybe he's that guy. Yeah. So he had 691 and then 630. So I think as long as he's around 600, he's going to be totally fine. Is he one of those guys that's going to take the next step around speed? It could be. I think he's a player that, if you build like I typically build, right, and you go with a lot of pitcher heavy early, he's a guy that can help you catch up on that speed pretty quickly. So yeah, but it's just a question of, again, where he hits in the lineup and how many plate appearances he has. He's very good defensively, so he should be in there. He does also have the added benefit of having the second base eligibility as well. And so, that probably puts his check mark for me with Edman over Swanson. But the balanced profile is obviously more Dansby because of the power that he can provide. And, he should give you some pretty good counting stats, even though the Cubs lineup isn't, it's nothing to write home about, but I think it's not one of those lineups that's so bad that it's really going to severely impact, his ability to get runs and RBI.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. It's Swanson for me. I love the fact he'll be hitting in the middle of the Cubs lineup. At least the top half of the lineup isn't going to be that bad. Like there's still going to be run production to be had there. So I like that. He'll have a free pass to run because we saw that even with the Cubs last year. The guys that could run got to run pretty much whenever they wanted to, which is a plus. So Swanson will be able to drive in runs, he'll be able to score runs, he'll be able to steal a will. Like, I don't know if he goes 20-20, but he could put up another 20, 22 home runs and like 15, 16 stolen bases pretty easily. And the counting stats can be a lot better. So I like that with him. Edman, like, another 30 steals definitely in the bag, no matter if he's ninth or first in the lineup. We know that with him. The power to me is always like, is he ever going to show the production that we like hoped he would? He could. Who knows? But there's just so many question marks, especially with that Cardinals team. There's a lot of moving parts right now. Like even Newt Bar, there's like a crowded outfield all of a sudden. There's a lot going on there. in St. Louis for playing time. I'm not saying it's going to like affect Edmund as much, but it could. There's a lot of moving pieces there, and it could definitely affect the spot in the batting order. Let's put it that way. Edmund's not going to lose his spot in the field, but the batting order can really shift with a lot going on there. So give me Dansby Swanson on this one, and I'll just forever be the fade Edmund guy. I was on him the first year when he was cheap. Haven't been on him since, so we'll see how it keeps going. The next one is a fun one for me because a lot of interesting players. You got Tim Anderson, ADP of 88, Xander Bogaerts, ADP of 93, Willie Adames, ADP of 95. So you got three shortstops rounding out the top 100 in ADP here. And there's a lot of interesting arguments for all three of them. So how do you view Anderson, Bogaerts, Adames?
Yeah, Bogarts is clearly the last one for me. I think, well, I guess ADP doesn't have it exactly right because Bogarts is a little bit ahead of Adames, but not really interested in Xander all that much. Obviously, the batting average will be good. I just question a little bit of the pop, especially going to that cavernous ballpark there. Yeah, so I'm not that into Xander. The speed, is a little bit fluctuating. I think there's a lot more question mark about what the production is going to be there, and I think there's better players to address kind of at that point in the draft. I do like the other two though. Adames, I think if you're looking for maybe if you're a little bit light on power, and you're looking for it from shortstop, I think Adames is the guy, could be the guy to go there without necessarily hurting you in steals. The batting average is obviously the one question mark, but I think if you look at his projection, it's not like an awful, it's not an awful projection, I want to say. If I could ever find it, my sheet is a little bit more difficult to find the exact, number for the, I'll just stop trying. But I think it's in the 240s. So it's not necessarily crushing you. I think he had that pretty low BABIP last year, if my memory serves me correctly.
Yes, he did.
So there's that. And I think, he stole a little bit. Maybe he steals a little bit more now. He's going to play every day. He's in the middle of that lineup. So I think that's a really nice spot for him. Tim Anderson is another interesting one as well. I mean, he actually rates out as one of the better values in the draft for me at this point in time. I think, but, I think there's, one of the things that I struggle with, I actually drafted him in TGFBI. The thing is, you don't see a ton of 600 plate appearances, out of him, right? So the playing time is a little bit of a question, but at the same time, would you take him at 525 or would you take him at 550 with the batting average that he's going to provide? The last time he hit 550, he went 309, 17, 94, 61, 18. That sounds pretty good to me. Yeah, I mean, I would take that at my pick, around pick 90. So I would take that. So I think it's really a question of health with Tim Anderson. And so again, it is not necessarily a super easy pick to make for that reason, but there's also, it could be really juicy. I have him projected at 576 plate appearances. So, if you drop that a little bit, then, he falls back closer to where he should be going in ADP in terms of rank. But, I do love that very high batting average. He's one of the few guys that you can kind of pencil in for 290 plus. And that does a lot for your team when you're able to do that. So I do like Tim Anderson, but I like him and Adames. I think they're fine. I think there's a lot of shortstops kind of going in this general area of the draft that I'm a fan of. So.
Yeah, for me, it's Willie Adames. You mentioned the low BABIP. Yeah, I was down to 278 last year. He's been 330 or above most of his career. So I wouldn't be shocked if even the Bat X has him at 247, ATC 246. That'd be much more inclined. 31 homers last year. We've seen the power improve year after year, and his batting average or his strikeouts dropped to 27% from 28%. It's not a big drop, but hey, I'll take anything I can get from a young player. He's only be 28 this year. And what I love to see is his barrel rates, his hard hit rates. They've continued to increase year after year after year. So as he's getting more comfortable at the plate, it's been a marked improvement for Willie Adames. And the 8 steals last year was a career high for him. So if he could, like you said, sneak in 10 or something, that'd be pretty sweet as well. Tim Anderson would be second for me. Bogarts is always just a do not draft for me. Just kind of a at least his ADP is not great, but it's not a dead average, but it feels like a dead average when you got a guy like Xander Bogarts. Plus, you mentioned that ballpark and everything. I'll pass. So it comes down to Tim Anderson at number two, and it's strictly the health and the batting, the plate appearances, as you mentioned. You mentioned the year he had, 550 plate appearances in 2021. That was outstanding. The 2 years he had 600 plus in 17 and 18. Those were great years. The batting average has been amazing the last 3 years, like we talked about. BABIP driven, that's who he is. So that's strong. It's just the guy's got to stay healthy. He hasn't played more than 123 games since 2018. So that's the only concern I have with Tim Anderson. Again, you're not paying a premium for him like you have been in years past. So that's a plus for Tim Anderson. But if I got to like separate him by any little bits, I got Willie Adames, then Tim Anderson, then Xander Bogarts. I don't have any shares of Tim Anderson yet. I feel like I need to remedy that at some point in time, just in case he stays healthy, because he will be a gift. He'll be the guy that I was drafting everywhere last year, and that's why it'll be even more frustrating if he stays healthy this year. But yeah, it's Adames, Anderson, Xander Bogarts for me.
The one thing I'll say about Bogarts is that, since we both kind of crapped on him, for good reason, I may add, is that, like, if you look at his batting average the last 5 years, right? And it's like a random sample, but 288, 309, 300, 295, 307. And his projection is 270, 277, 275, 266, 269, right? So if you were to actually say, oh, well, what if we give Bogarts, a 290 batting average? Then the projections bump him up and he becomes a value. So if you believe that batting average, right? If you believe he can hit that batting average, that he's going to be in the middle of that lineup, and he's also going to, hit close to 20 home runs, well, then, I mean, that's a little bit of a different story for him as well. So I could see him dropping or people not believing the projected average, which I think is a super reasonable thing to do. And then as a result, thinking that Bogarts is interesting to grab there.
Yeah, that's fair. Very fair. I wish he had more power. Be Corey Seager. That's what I wish he could be. Next ADP debate, we have Thairo Estrada at 166, Vaughn Grissom at 169, Brandon Lau at 173. So we're getting into the deeper masses here at the second base position. How do you rate these? And don't feel bad. You can offend me all you want.
Yeah, Thairo Estrada, I think pretty clearly is the one out of this group. I mean, yeah, I like him. I have not gotten him yet, but I do like him.
I have many shares.
Yeah, I had second base, shortstop, probably going to play every day.
Might
Speed,
play the
power combo, batting average. He could get outfield too. That's impressive. So I do like that a lot. I think he's just going in an area where there's a lot of different players that I like, and so I haven't necessarily grabbed him. Not really interested in Brandon Lau. I could definitely see where he becomes, huge value if he plays on a regular basis, but I think he's probably going to be part of a platoon. Yep. And yeah, I mean, we'll kind of see what he ends up doing. He's also got to stay healthy, which, again, you're healthy until you're not, or you're not healthy until you are. We've seen that a number of different times, so I can definitely see that happening as well. And then the other player you mentioned,
Vaughn Grissom.
Was Vaughn Grissom. Yeah, sorry. I mean, I could definitely see it on a per plate appearance basis for Grissom. I could see being interested in him. Question is going to be whether he plays, and also, like, if he starts off, what is the percentage chance that he struggles initially and gets benched like he did last year? I think that's a major concern you have to have, even if he's kind of in that position. But on a per plate appearance basis, if I remember correctly from his, so they have him hitting ninth. So he's got 10 home runs, 13 steals, and 469 plate appearances with 262 average. I mean, that's really good, right? It's very similar to Thairo Estrada going later on in drafts. So if you think he's going to be good, if you think he's going to be able to, play the shortstop well enough to stay in that lineup and then stay healthy enough to stay in that lineup as well, then I think he's a really interesting, he could be a really interesting guy there. The projections just don't see it right now. And, I think there's a little bit too many instances where he's just that you're dropping him, right? Like, he's not even playing. I think there's too many instances where that occurs for me to be interested in right here. I think maybe if he was going like in the mid 200s or something like that, I'd be a little bit more interested. But I think there's enough players that I feel confident that they're going to be good, and I feel confident that they'll be close enough to what he's going to give you to go there. So
Yep, we're on the same page. It's Thyro Strata for me. If I had to go, Von Grissom would be number 2. I just don't have any shares because a lot of the concerns you mentioned, I'm concerned about. Like, is he going to play enough? Like, he should gain shortstop eligibility, which will be nice. But is he going to be the everyday guy? There's a lot of questions to be had there. Then Brandon Lau is the clear third for me. There's so many people that love him. He's had one season where he played over 82 games as 2021, and he had a great year, 39 homers, 247. Awesome. He's done it once. And even last year, it wasn't just injuries, like you mentioned, he got platooned last year. And that is always a concern with Tampa Bay. And I don't see that changing this year with the makeup of that roster. So I just stay away from Brandon Lau. If he proves me wrong, so be it. But I don't see how he plays. Like, all the projections have him for like 100, Bad X 125 games. Most of them have him for 125. They got him for 21, 24 home runs, which is cool, which is good. I don't even know if he gets to 125. Like I said, he's only gotten over 82 one time. Like, so we're asking for a lot there from Brandon Lau, and I'm just going to pass on that and take Thyro Estrada and move on and get the all the 5 categories potentially with Thyro Estrada. The power will probably be the weakest of his 5 categories, but I'm still a believer he's a 15 home run guy where some people don't think he is. He's shown he can hit the ball hard with the max EV. He's young. I'd still give him some time to develop that as well. So I'm pretty happy with what we're seeing there with Thyro. All right, couple more here real quick. We got Gene Segura. Where are you, Gene? Let's scroll down and find it. Gene Segura.
220 is what I have met.
220. Oh, yep, there he is. I had 218 over the last couple of weeks, and then Luis Arise at 220. So they're about 2 picks apart right now. I'm just going to say real quick, it's an easy Gene Segura for me. But what's your thoughts on these two?
Yeah, it's a really good putting them next to each other because in my spreadsheet, which I haven't mentioned in a couple minutes, he's Segura's 220, Arias is 216 for ADP, and they're 190 and 196. So they're both showing up as decent values, and they're right next to each other with about the same value. Like, they're both like 24 to 25 picks above where they should theoretically be going, which is good for drafters. I'm a Gene Segura guy too here. The one concern, like, I was super into Segura, and like the one thing that gives me a little bit of pause, not enough pause to like not necessarily draft him, but is they do have him hitting 6th in that Miami lineup, and I worry a little bit about the counting stats in that particular situation. Like, it's not a bad spot for steals, but it's not going to be a great place for homers. And I just think that the runs in RBI could be pretty low in that type of a situation. So I'm a little concerned about that. But Arias is still a little bit of too much of a one-trick pony. I do think it's interesting, with him batting leadoff. I think the middle of that lineup could be a little bit better, than people anticipate, right? Like, kind of last year was the worst that it could be with both, Soler and Avi and Cooper being injured. Oh, I guess they have Arias hitting 3rd at this point now and Jazz hitting 1st. So I haven't looked at their lineups recently, so maybe that's swapped. He's a little bit more interesting in hitting 3rd. But not going to give you a lot of power, not going to give you a lot of steals. But if you are back in batting average and you want to kind of go with one of those one-trick type ponies, I could definitely see going through it to him there.
Yeah, it's Gene Segura for me. I've never been a Luis Arias guy. He's a better real-life player than fantasy player for me. But there are some very smart people that like him, and I'll go down with that ship. The last one I have here, when I made this list 2 weeks ago, they were right next to each other in ADP. Since then, the last 2 weeks ADP, Bryson Stott is 224 and Ha-Seong Kim is 245. So they're a little bit apart now. Do you have any thoughts on these two real quick?
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts are if you're drafting them for your team, you maybe waited a little bit too long. No, I mean, I think that they're both really interesting. I mean, Stott is interesting. He's still really young. He has really good plate discipline. The batted ball quality is not necessarily there. The question is going to be whether he's in a platoon as well. They brought in Josh Harrison. I feel like at this point in time, that's probably the play that they go with is Josh Harrison against lefties and Stott against righties. And if that's the case, right, then that 497 plate appearances is looking a little bit more accurate than it would otherwise. And that's 12 home runs, 11 steals, 247 batting average, and those projections look great. But then it's like then you have to manage kind of the lineup, right? You have to figure out when he's playing, figure out when he's not playing, and all that jazz. And it's just kind of like, is that worth it for Bryson Stott? With Ha-Seong Kim, I think he should definitely play on a regular basis. So I definitely think there's some interest there. It's actually kind of remarkable. Like the Padres lineup gets so bad pretty quickly. Right now they obviously don't have Tatis Jr. in there, but you got Jake Cronenworth hitting fourth. You got Nelson Cruz, Matt Carpenter, Ha-Seong Kim, Trent Grisham, Austin Nola. Like it's just a little bit of a rough go there. And then with Kim, you have a very similar projection, a higher plate appearance projection, but you're looking at low teens in terms of home runs and low teens in terms of steals as well. Last year he almost got 600 plate appearances and he was at 11 and 12 with close to 60-60. At close to 600 plate appearances, I think you're hoping for a little bit more, and maybe he does get slightly better, but pretty similar actually. Like his barrel rate was actually down from his first year. It was at 4.2% from 4.5. Had a max EV that was a little bit lower as well. So I'm not sure what the ceiling really is there with them. So yeah, I'm not really interested in either of them right there. There's just different players that I'm targeting in this position in the draft.
Yeah, no, I'm not on either one of them. If I have to pick one of the two, I'll give a chance to Bryson Stott, but I'm not really on either one of them. So I'll keep that short and sweet on that one. Let's do second base targets here. ADP
My
11.
camera is making people dizzy, Bubba.
I wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't worry about it. ADP 11 through 20. We got Vaughn Grissom, Brandon Lau, Jonathan India, Whit Merrifield, Jake Cronenworth, Jeff McNeil, Ketel Marte, Brandon Drury, Josh Rojas, Gene Segura. Are any of these guys targets for you on draft day?
Oh man, hold on one second.
You can say no.
Yeah, I know. Well, I don't have them on my list, so I gotta pull up ADP and look at who they are, because it just says 11 through 20. Let's see what we got here. Hold on one sec. Sorry, just because I can't remember all of them. All right. So we got middle infield.
All right.
Oh, second base. Sorry.
Yeah.
Apologies. All right. 11. So we got our guy Estrada, who we talked about. Is that who you're starting with? Sorry.
I have Vaughn Grissom. I have dates of 220 to 36.
Okay. So Vaughn Grissom, we talked about him. We had talked about Estrada as well. Brandon Lowe, we talked about. I do like Jonathan India as like a potential bounce back for him. A lot of these guys, like I don't have India on any of my teams, but I feel like I kind of want to, but I'm not sure. It's just like the way that the draft flows, he just doesn't seem to be coming my way. Jeff McNeil, not really interested in him. Batting average only profile. I'd rather wait and get Luis Arias. Ketel Marte is really interesting. Like the projections love him. The projections always love him. And he's really only had that one good season where he's been kind of fantasy viable. And so
bouncy ball year too.
Yeah, it's the bouncy ball year too. So it's kind of like the projections really make me want to like him, but I haven't gone after him either. Cronenworth is a compiler, not really going to get you home runs, not really going to get you steals, decent batting average, decent counting stats if he's hitting in the middle of that lineup. So I don't mind that, but I'm not that into it. I'm probably not targeting it there. Brandon Drury, probably not. I just think there's too many ways that he fails or doesn't get enough playing time in that particular situation. Whit Merrifield, I do like Whit a decent amount. He is hitting towards the back end of that lineup, but I think he does have second base and outfield. So he should get a good, decent run. And so I feel like 20 steals is definitely possible, and a little bit of pop, especially with the new dimensions on the outfield. They might be able to help him a little bit more because he's good for 10 home runs or so. And then Arias, we talked about. Stott, we talked about. Yeah, I think that's what I have through 20. Is that right?
Yeah, it's pretty close. India's pretty much India and Cronenworth are probably the only two guys I'm interested in here. I got Gene Segura at 20, and I don't mind him. But yeah, India and Cronenworth. India's by far my favorite here. That's why it's just a bad position. It's like you kind of have to take a guy early and don't like it, or I don't know, or you just keep waiting. But it's not ideal. Let's put it that way. It's not an ideal position at second base, but at least you're almost at ADP 200 here. So you can start taking chances. Like I've taken a few chances on Brandon Drury earlier in the draft season, not as in love with it as the season goes on with all the moving pieces in Anaheim and how they might be using things there. So less than ideal in that scenario. But yeah, India and Cronenworth are the main two for me, especially Cronenworth with first base, second base eligibility, that MICI. I do like that quite a bit. A lot of flexibility there. But and then Segura will get third base, so that's big as well. But yeah, not a ton in this range. 21 through 30. Who are you looking at here? Because I actually like a few more here, I think, than I did 11 through 20.
Yeah, so now mine has Bryson Stott again in it. I don't know if that's what yours reads as well, but
Yeah, yeah, I
yeah,
have
okay.
Bryson Stott at 22.
Okay, I've met 21 in mine. So my dates are probably a little bit off, but I'll just go through. So Stott, not really interested for the reasons I mentioned. Gene Segura, I like him. Definitely would go after him there. I mentioned the concerns towards the back end, but you're picking pick 220. Most guys here have some sort of concern about them. I do like Luis Urias. I think he's a guy who could take that next step. He's got the triple position eligibility, which is really nice. Again, I find myself drafting different positions at this point in the draft right now, but he's definitely somebody where if I've missed out on second base or shortstop, or I still need my MI filled, I think he's a really nice guy to go to right here. Colton Wong, also he's going to be platoon, but he should be hitting leadoff in that Mariners lineup against righties. So if you can time it right, which is always super annoying, he could be interesting, and he shows up as a little bit of a value. DJ LeMahieu, I'm just not sure what we're getting at this point in time, right? With the dead end ball, him going oppo so much, like that's really impacted his home run total. If he's playing every day and hitting towards the top of that lineup, then I think it's a little bit of a different story. But I'm not sure that he's going to get there, and I'm not sure he's going to stay healthy enough to do that either. Christopher Morel, I think he's having an awful spring so far. Not really interested in him, though. If he does get plate appearances, I mean, no doubt he can go 2010, 2015 for sure over the course of a full season. John Birdie, he's not playing every day. I picked him up in a DC where I was short on speed, and just because I was like, well, maybe he'll get like a run for like a month or two when somebody's injured and I can accumulate some steals there. But it's really hard in redraft to be able to roster a guy like that and keep him on your lineup. Chris Taylor, I think he's really intriguing to me. He should have second base, shortstop, and outfield pretty early on in the season. He's playing for the Dodgers. He should get enough playing time. I think the projections are underselling that a little bit. So he's definitely kind of a middle infield and maybe even an outfield target for me, depending on what my team build looks like so far. Brendan Donovan, not really that interested. I got to do a little bit of a deeper dive, though, if he's going to play on a regular basis. I wasn't anticipating that was going to happen, but they seem to be batting him pretty high up the lineup. And he started off well this spring. I think he's a pretty similar profile to Edman, except without speed. Not super interested in that, but he exists. And then Isaac Paredes, not really into him. I know a lot of some really smart people like him. He's got the triple position eligibility. He should play a decent amount, but I'm just not sure. I mean, it seemed like he was way overperforming his power potential, maybe underperforming the batting average, but the projections don't really like the batting average either, although they do like him as like a little bit of a decent value going on right here. So actually, no, they don't. Mine don't anymore. So that's something that has changed. So yeah, so not a ton of guys in there, but there's a few of them that I might go after as my middle infielder or even like an outfielder like a Chris Taylor or something like that.
Yeah, this is the range. A lot of middle infield options here. Colton Wong, I'll keep going back to. I know they said they're going to platoon him, but we'll see how long that lasts for. He can hit lefties okay. So, I guess it's, oh God, I was blanked on who the heck is he going to platoon with? Mr. like Moore, I believe it is, that hits 210
Oh,
and
Dylan
steals a million
Moore.
base.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dylan Moore. So, yeah, Colton Wong, I like. Christopher Morel, I agree, horrible spring, but that tool and that age, like there's a lot to like in a power speed guy if he gets playing time in Chicago. So, I like that. Nick Gordon's here, who I'm always a fan of. Love the Chris Taylor call, especially with gaining shortstop eligibility. That can be big as well. He's actually moving up for me quite a bit. And then Isak Paredes, I like quite a bit. If the multi position is awesome, I think there is a lot of legit power there. He had a decent amount of power in the minor leagues, and he played for Detroit, so we know how that goes. Comes over to Tampa Bay, see the power kind of start to develop again. Last year when he hit his 20 home runs, I think there's definitely 20 home run power in that bat. I think he's better than a 205 hitter too. So there's a lot to like there, and they want to get him on the field as much as possible. So I think there is something there. He's going to be 24 this year, so still super young. It doesn't cost you much in ADP. So I'm a fan of Isak there. So I like a lot more guys in this 21 to 30 range than I did 11 through 20. Let's go to shortstop now. Let's go 11 through 20, which starts with Tim Anderson and ends with Bryson Stott. What do you like in this range?
So I like we talk about Tim Anderson, like him, Dansby, I like as well, but haven't been able to get there. But who knows? I mean, things can change on that. Wander's interesting. When we first did the preview, like he was a guy that I mentioned as being really interested in. Well, since the other projections have come rolling in, he is now like one of the bigger fades. I don't know if that's the case for me. It's like you can see where the development isn't linear with him, and he's just an explosive guy who hits for a little bit more power, steals a few more bases, and wins the batting crown, and like that's just an incredible guy to be able to get in this position. But the projections don't think that's going to happen, but they sometimes miss with guys like him. Talked about Bogarts again. That batting average is really going to drive whether he makes sense as a pick for you or not. Adames is great. I like him. Pena, I have not really been interested in and have not drafted him. He shows up as a negative guy, but I mean, he's also seems like a player who should be really good, like really cares, tries really hard, did well in the clutch, was injured last year. So if you're into Jeremy Pena, I could totally get that as well. Ahmed Rosario, I like a lot. Kind of contributes all over the place, maybe a little bit light in power, a little bit light in RBI, but he plays every day. He steals, he hits for a little bit of pop. And he's got that solid batting average, pretty consistent. So I like Rosario as well in that spot. Haven't really been into Correa. I think it's more a profile issue. The sheet actually likes him a little bit. But I think it's more just like this profile is not necessarily like something that I don't feel like I can replicate a little bit later on in the draft. You're not really going to get speed. The batting average is okay, but not great. So I kind of tend to steer clear of that a little bit. I do like Nico Horner, like the profile. Him and Rosario are pretty similar to me, just in terms of like kind of the batting average. Probably low teens. Maybe Horner doesn't quite get there, but maybe there's a little bit more speed for him. So I like him as well. I like Thairo Estrada, like I mentioned before. I like Javi Baez a lot. I think where he's going, he's a tremendous value. It's just a question about like the profile doesn't necessarily, that type of profile that he has doesn't age gracefully. Like I think it was Eno that did some research on that, but like the guys with the really high O swings do not get better with time. But he was also injured last year. So I think it depends on whether you're like buying the injury versus the just reduction in skills. But I like him where he's going right there. I think if you've missed out on your earlier shortstop, I think you can go do a lot worse than Baez. Stott, I mentioned him not being super interested in him. I'll stop there.
Yeah, Tim Anderson, we talked about him earlier. Definitely a little more intriguing to me than he once was. Love Willie Adames. Big circle around Willie Adames. Jeremy Pena, I do have some shares of, but now that the news is out, and I should have paid more attention to this before, Baker basically said, as long as Michael Brantley's healthy, he's my number 2 hitter, which is Dusty Baker at his finest. Just loves those veterans. And he basically said, well, it's because Brantley's done it longer. That was his answer. Not that Pena's better. Like, come on, Dusty. Like, come on,
That's
man.
why Kyle Tucker will hit 6th again this year, right?
Jesus, criminy, Dusty. So I still like Pena because I think how healthy is Brantley going to stay. Let's be realistic about that. Nico Horner is intriguing if you like that profile. I like that start a lot. We talked about him, but I'm on the Javi Baez bounce back as well, just based on price alone. He might not ever be the guy we once remember him being in Chicago, but he's also not an ADP close to 170 probably either. It does stink hitting in Detroit. No sugarcoating that, but he is a definite, I think, upside play. You mentioned the value on your sheet. And then because the biggest thing is for me is if you miss out or you're waiting on stuff after Baez, the next shortstop is like over 50 picks later. It starts to get bleak real quick. So it drops off a cliff. and Baez would be one of the last resorts for me. All right, 21 through 30, you got CJ Abrams all the way down to like Joey Wendell, Anthony Volpe area. So who do you like in this 21 to 30?
Abrams could be interesting, but Davey Martinez was saying that he's not going to hit towards the front end of the lineup, that he's got to kind of earn that spot. And that really hurts him for me because the home runs are going to be pretty low, I think, with him. I just don't really see the power unless it develops kind of season to season, which is definitely possible with a guy with his prospect pedigree. The steals are interesting, but if he's batting towards the back end of that lineup, I think everything else could be a little gnarly. I mean, the batting average should be decent too. Ezekiel Tovar is one where I'm like, I really want to get him. And I never end up getting him. And even though like he's still around at ADP, and I think it's just because of the needs I have in any given draft at that point in time, and maybe question marks about where he's going to hit and whether he's going to stay up. But the projections like him, we talked about Kim, I talked about Urias when we talked about second base. Jorge Mateo, no interest at all. Oswaldo Peraza, if he's the shortstop, I think he could be really interesting. If he's the starting shortstop, I think when you project him out to 600 plate appearances, it's pretty nice. Adalberto Mondesi, not really interested either. Luis Garcia, I haven't really been interested in that much either. I think he's another one where it's like you're hoping the batting average is really good. Not quite sure about the power and the speed and whether that's going to come through for you. Andrews is interesting, kind of where he's going a little bit. Playing second base, he's going to get that eligibility. He may hit towards the back of the lineup, but you could see him putting together like another 15-10 season, something like that, playing for the White Sox. Volpe, you're kind of hoping that he becomes the starting shortstop. He's one of those guys where if he's not the starting shortstop, then you got to have that debate with yourself and redraft about whether you're going to drop him or not. And not necessarily something you want to do, but if you don't have to, if it only costs you 330, maybe that's the risk that you take there. That's the last one I have. Is there one that I didn't cover that's in there?
That's pretty much it, I believe.
Yeah.
I like CJ Abrams a lot. I just wish the Nationals liked him as much as I did. I think there's a lot of power, especially speed, to unlock there if they just let him go at the top of the order. So I've had him in a few drafts, especially at that ADP. I agree with you on Ezekiel Tovar. He's supposed to be the dude in Colorado, so I'm a fan of him as well. These are more middle infield options, though. I'd hate these guys to be my starting shortstops. Let's be very clear about that. After that, though, I like Oswaldo Peraza if he is the shortstop. It looks like he should be unless something crazy happens. So I like him at that ADP. Elvis Andrus is a late shot, is in play because I agree. I could see a replication or at least close to last season. Obviously not as crazy, but pretty solid year there for Chicago. And then Luis Garcia of Washington as a long shot late. Don't hate him. I like a 310 ADP, second base shortstop eligibility, really good batting average asset. The power looks like it could continue to be developing. So there is a little something there, but we'll see how that plays out as well. All right. We got a listener question. I believe it's only one. I'll double check, but we got one for the show, and it comes from William Conklin, Toby. A few months have passed. Who's a middle infielder and or relief pitcher that you have changed your opinion on for the better, and who's one that you changed your opinion on for the worse?
Relief pitcher and middle infielder?
And or. It could be just one or the other.
I mentioned Wander is the one that's kind of changed negatively for me, I guess, going from like the guy that I thought I'd be all over to somebody that I'm not all that interested in at this point. Again, I could go after him, but the spreadsheet says no. I think Baez is somebody that I've gotten more interested in as the kind of draft season has progressed. Again, if you wait a long time, he, like you mentioned, he's kind of like there's a little bit of a cliff after him. So he's somebody who's moved up a little bit in my eyes. And then, so I answered the first part of that question, right?
Yep, you answered the whole question.
Okay, now I gotta do relief pitchers, right?
No, it was and or. You don't have to do both if you don't want to. It's up to you.
Oh, I don't know if there's really like anybody that's moved all that dramatically.
For me, it's Camilo Duvall. I'm all out on Duvall. I was in on him early. I'm out on him now. So that's 100% a shift in my liking at reliever. I don't know if there's anybody else that stands out to you because they kind of all feel the same for the most part to me.
Mm-hmm.
Middle infield, though, The biggest thing for me, I guess, is pretty much out on Jazz Chisholm, which really hurts to say. Which really hurts to say.
Wow.
So that's one.
From you,
It,
that's
yeah,
meaningful.
if he were to if the ADP were to fall to like round 4-ish, I'd be a little better about it. Maybe at Barf on the 3-4 turn, if he falls, I'll be more interested. But
Well, don't tell me that.
oh,
I
it's
know you're
fun.
just playing me. I know you're just playing me now. You're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go for Jazz Chisholm at that 3-4 turn with you drafting right next to me on either side.
Well,
That's what I'm
because
gonna go
look at
for. I really don't like him, but I might go that direction. Just
over
kidding.
his last 2 weeks, his ADP is anywhere between 31 and 56. I don't mind it closer to the 56 side of thing. There's no way I'm going towards the 31 side of things with Jazz Chisholm. That's the conundrum. And then another player that I'm a little more interested in, I still haven't gone all in, but I'm starting to dig in more and potentially take some chances on is O'Neal Cruz. Because I can see the ceiling with O'Neal Cruz. There's also a very large pit, a floor with O'Neal Cruz. But I definitely see the appeal with O'Neal Cruz. That could be a game changer type deal. Super young guy that can figure it out. So a little more interested on him than I was before because I was completely all out at one point in time. So we'll see. Anybody else that stands out to you that has shifted your opinion a lot?
No, I don't think so. There's not like a ton of relief pitcher ones. So yeah.
All righty. Then final thoughts, Toby, on our relief pitchers and middle infielders as we move on to the outfield next week.
Yeah, I mean, my only thought is like you forgot to say the comment about how can I go 2 minutes without mentioning the spreadsheet from Pete Christensen, right?
Yep, DC got you. Yep.
Yeah, he got me. So as an honorary in honor of that tweet, I'm going to have a podcast at the end of this draft season where I go through my entire spreadsheet from player one all the way to player 1500. And that's all I'm going to do is say player's name, where I have them ranked,
Dollar
how much
value.
money, and then where their ADP is, and then what the value difference is.
That'd be amazing.
So I'm just going to do that, and it'll be the Pete Christensen honorary podcast.
That'd be
I'm going to invite
glorious.
him on to join me, so it'll be fun.
Oh, that'd be amazing. You guys can compare notes for all 1,500 players. That'd be so good. So good. Well, I hope you guys
But
enjoy.
I do want somebody to create a bot that's called Toby's spreadsheet, and Toby's spreadsheet bot, and it just puts out projected player valuations and what their ADP valuation is. That'd be great.
Don't tempt Twitter. Like these guys will
I
figure it
don't
out.
know. It could be great.
I think Draft Sheet's already working on one as we speak. So
Sounds
let's not
good.
worry about that right
Hey,
now.
we're all going to be replaced by artificial intelligence at some point in time, right?
It's
So we
coming.
might as well
It's
lean
coming.
into it.
Yeah, we should all enjoy it. And while we can, draft before you can't. So have fun in all those regards. Next time I talk to you or in person will be this Saturday. It's hopefully in San Francisco, barring the crazy weather we talked about earlier. But that should be a blast. The rec room. If anybody's out there and wants to come hang out, the rec room starting draft at noon on Saturday. Come on down. It'll be fun. But other than that, we'll get back with your outfield review preview next week, which should be a fun one because that's had some moving parts with injuries and whatnot over the last few weeks. And a guy named Jordan Walker has been quite the big deal. Might have to talk about him as well. So check out Toby on Twitter at BatFlipCrazy. I'm at BDantric. This was Bubba the BatFlip episode 149. Catch y'all next time.